Hi everyone! For today's video I'm painting my first paint by numbers and giving you some tips if you want to try this out. This paint by numbers kit was sent to me by iDIY Paint, so I'll also be reviewing the kit. Keep in mind though that I haven't tried any other paint by number kits, so I can't compare this to the other options out there. There are links below if you want to check out this kit or any of their other paint by number kits. I chose this African sunset landscape called Generations and I didn't check the size, so I was surprised at how big the box was when it arrived. The canvas is 40 by 50 centimeters and it came pre-stretched. Sometimes you might need to buy the stretchers separately and stretch the canvas yourself. So this is an easier option if you don't want to do that. I'll talk about whether I thought it was a good thing or not later in the video. There are some instructions and tips on the cardboard box it comes in. The English on the box is not great, which I think is often the case with kits and supplies coming from China. The kit comes with the canvas that has the image outlines and the numbers printed on it. You get the paints in little pots with lids and the numbers on top, so you can match the paint color with the numbers on the canvas. You also get 3 paint brushes. It also comes with a kit for hanging the painting, but we'll talk about that later as well. You get a copy of the image and some printed instructions. The copy is especially handy if you make a mistake or cover a number but leave some corner unpainted and then forget what the number was. The paint feels thick, but the coverage on the lighter colors especially was not that great. The brushes feel okay. I did the whole painting with them. I didn't use any of my own. I did cut off a few little stray hairs of the small brushes to make them easier to use. I only noticed this afterwards looking at the listing, but I wondered why they sent a large brush and then 2 small ones of the same size, or at least a very similar size. However, the listing says there's a large, medium and a small brush. So I think I got 2 mediums or 2 smalls. I would have liked a smaller brush for details, so I'm thinking they were mediums. It says on the box that this is DIY oil painting, but after using the paints I'm sure it's not oil, it's acrylic paint. Oil paints might be nicer for this since they dry slower and you'd be able to blend the paints easier, but that would add the hassle of how to clean the brushes and what to use as a solvent and all that. Whereas with acrylic paints you can just use water. So I think acrylic paints are the better choice in the end. This paint by numbers kit is definitely for adults and maybe teenagers, but it's way too detailed and intricate for kids. I think this would work for you if you want to work on the same piece over a long period of time as something relaxing and calming to do. I enjoyed painting this while listening to an audiobook or watching YouTube. You're not going to finish it in 1 or 2 sittings. I tried painting this as fast as possible to get the video out, and it still took me a week or more to finish this, compared to a usual painting that I might make in a couple of days. Some paintings take more than others though, but if you're not rushing it and painting multiple hours a day, every day, it's likely going to take weeks to finish. And it's because of the small areas you need to paint. On a normal painting, I would cover up large areas with a background color and then paint details on top, which I think is a lot faster. Besides the time it took, this was different for me because I'm used to working in a smaller size than this. I don't regret choosing this specific kit though, because I do think it will look nice on my wall. I chose the color scheme so that it would suit my decor. It matches the color of one of my walls quite nicely. And I really like the African sunset savanna with animals type landscape paintings anyway. I've actually made one before, years ago, but mine was a lot more simple than this and it also had brighter colors and bigger contrasts with black silhouettes and no muted colors, so this one looks a lot more realistic. And that kind of leads me to another benefit of paint by numbers. You can produce a good outcome even as a beginner painter, since all the prep work was already done for you. Paint by numbers is more like coloring rather than making a new painting from scratch. The composition, outlines, color choices and color mixing have already been done for you. You do need to take your time though and try to paint smoothly to make the outcome look nice. So you can go about it in different ways. You can paint all areas of the same number at once and then move on to the next number, as I was doing for the most part. The painting proceeds faster that way, but you don't get to blend the colors. You could also paint it in sections. So in this painting I could have painted one elephant at a time, and that way the paint would stay wet while I paint the area, and I could blend the light oranges into the darker browns and make the gradient look softer. When you're working on such a large canvas, one color at a time, by the time you get to the next color, the previous one is already dry, so there's no way to blend them anymore. However, since the areas are so small and you have a lot of in-between shades in going from the darkest to the lightest, it doesn't look like just blocks of color, so I don't mind this look. And you can even go over the edges with a mix of the two colors later and blend them that way. I'll link a video about blending below. I found that you definitely need to go over every section at least twice. For the darker colors, that's enough coverage, but for the light ones you need even more to cover up the black printed numbers and outlines. The image was so intricate with such tiny areas to paint that I found it hard to stay inside the lines. But the good news is that you don't have to stay inside the lines. In fact, you have to paint slightly over the lines to cover them up. Otherwise you'll be left with an outlined painting, which you might not want, unless you really like that look. Some instructions and tips I found online said to start with the darkest colors, and I started doing that at first, but then I realized that since I'm painting over the lines, I would prefer to do the darkest colors last, or at least the final layer of the darkest colors last, since it's easier to cover up any errors with a dark paint color on top of the lighter colors rather than trying to cover up the dark colors with the light paint. I painted the outlines with a smaller brush and then filled the inside with the larger brush. To avoid smudging the wet paint, try to work from top to bottom and left to right if you're right-handed, or vice versa. I definitely got some paint on my arms when I wasn't following that advice. You can also turn the painting around to make it easier to reach different areas. I wasn't doing that as much while I was filming, but I was doing it a lot off camera. Keep the paint pots closed when you're not using them to prevent them from drying. I even stored the paints in the fridge, because that's where I usually keep leftover paint. I painted some of this outside at the summer cottage, and it was like the windiest day of the summer, and I of course didn't realize to bring the top clamp of my easel, and I had to hold down the canvas with one hand and paint with the other. And then when I was taking photos or setting up the tripod into the lake, because I was painting on a pier and the tripod wouldn't fit, the wind would blow over the painting. So if you're planning to paint outside with an easel, definitely use the top clamp to keep the painting in place. And that way you can also position the painting vertically instead of tilted back, which might be a bit better. The easel is from Lidl and it's pretty small for this painting, but it worked. I was worried something would fall into the lake while I was painting, especially with the wind, but the only thing that did fall into the water was the plastic bag the paints came in, so that was okay. I just fished it out with a tripod leg. I painted the sides too, cause I don't think I'll frame this painting, and this way it will look more finished. As for the outlines and numbers on the canvas, there were some mistakes where the number was missing or the same area had two different numbers. But in those cases, maybe leave the area unpainted till the end and then use your own judgment on which color makes sense. The final color I painted was the darkest one, and I was surprised when I opened it. Everything else in the painting was yellow, orange, brown, a bit of reddish brown, and they look really harmonious together. But the darkest color that I was expecting to be dark brown was actually purple. I also wanted to mention the shipping of the kit. I was expecting to make this video a couple of months ago, but the kit just wouldn't arrive. It says on the website that shipping, which is free by the way, takes 10 to 40 days to Finland. If you live in the US, Canada, Australia, France or Germany, it should be faster. So the 40 days had passed and the package did not arrive, so I sent an email asking about it. I then got to see the tracking info and it said the post office had contacted me by email and I hadn't collected the package, so it was returned to their European warehouse. Now, I never got that email. I checked my junk email and it wasn't there either. So I'm not sure what happened, but IDIY Paint kindly sent the package to me again, and I gave them my phone number that time too, and I got the notification of the package arriving and it was fine. That time it took 9 business days to arrive. But in case you want to get one for a gift or something, keep in mind that the shipping times might be long. I'm not done with this painting yet as I'm editing this video. I definitely still need to cover up the numbers showing up through the lighter colors. From a distance the painting looks fine as it is, and I love the image, I love the color scheme, but when you look closely you can still see the numbers. I wish they were printed in grey instead of black, so they'd be easier to cover up. I might also need to fix up some places where I've painted over the lines, and I might add some extra highlights. I'll update you in another video once I do that, so you can see the final result. I'm looking at the painting on the wall as I'm making this voiceover. I hung it in the place of another painting for a while, and I can see shadows on the canvas when I'm looking at it from the side, so the canvas is a bit loose and saggy. One reason might be that it got loose during the shipping. I would like to try and tighten it, but I'm not sure how to do it though. I usually buy canvases from Lidl and they come with stretcher keys and stretcher key slots, although I've never had to use them yet. But this one does not have stretcher key slots, so I'll have to think of something else. If you get a loose canvas like this, it might be easier to tighten it before you paint on it. I'm not sure how well you can see it in the video, but the stretcher bars are kind of warped or crooked, so the painting didn't lie completely flat on the desk as I was painting. Now that I'm testing it on the wall, I don't think it's that noticeable, but I just wanted to point that out. It's of course easier for you to get a paint by numbers on a pre-stretched canvas like this, rather than to stretch it yourself, but the stretching might not be perfect. I'll also varnish the painting once it's done. I have another video about how I varnish acrylic paintings, if you want to see that. And I already know where I'll hang it once the painting is completely finished. Looking at the listing afterwards, it says the hanging kit includes 2 screws and 2 non-track hooks. So I got 3 screws and the metal accessories, but I did not get the white plastic hooks that are pictured in the listing. I have some of those from before though, so it's okay. If there's something missing in your kit though, I'm sure you can email them or send them a message through the contact form on the website and they'll send you the missing parts.